So today we're talking about how to use the diminished scale in jazz improvisation. My name is Paul Tobey from jazzmental.com. Appreciate you joining me. Yeah, the diminished scale, it has a lot of uses. It's a very versatile scale, but there is some challenges with it, and I'll talk about those and how to use it wisely right after this. Hey, welcome back. We're talking about the diminished scale today and its use in jazz improvisation. So I'm going to talk about what it is and its usage, but also I'm going to start off by saying be careful with this scale because it tends to be really overused. And the reason why it's overused is because it's fairly simple to do. And of course, improvisers are also always looking for tricks to do to save them from actually working real music out. So the problem with it is because it's such a uniform and sameness scale, it seems to go around and around and around like a long run-on sentence, diminished scale after diminished scale, and it really takes that sort of music out of the improvisation. So you got to be very careful with it. And you'll see that as I go through it. So let's take a look at what I've written here, and we'll start off with this C diminished scale. So I think we all know that a diminished chord is a chord that is built in thirds. So C diminished chord is minor third, minor third, minor third. And if you keep going up in minor thirds, you get the scale, you get the chord all over again. And there's a lot of arpeggiation done with those types of chords. And we're not really going to talk about that. What we are going to talk about is the scale, though, that is built over that. So the scale is essentially minor second, whole tone, half tone, whole tone, half tone, whole tone, half tone. So half tone, whole tone, half tone, whole tone, half tone, whole tone. And then you get back to the beginning. And of course, if you just go up in minor thirds, it's the same scale. You just start on a different note. And of course, the same thing goes if you go up a half step and you start all over again. So D flat diminished. And the D flat diminished scale is a little bit, it's the same formula, just starting on a different note. And then when you get to D diminished, same thing. So as you can see, what tends to happen is because they all sound the same and there's only 3 scales. Why? Because as soon as you go up a minor third, you're back to the first scale again. So like this. And then, like I said, you're back to the original scale. So because there's only 3 of them and you can use them over all these diminished chords, again, they tend to get overused. So let me give you a scenario in which you should be using them. So I've written that over here on the next page. So the cool thing about diminished chords is they contain 2 tritones in each chord. So in the C diminished chord, there's this tritone, which is essentially an augmented fourth. And then there's this tritone, which is also an augmented fourth. And as you know, 7th chords, a tritone apart, share the same tritone. So for example, this is an A flat 7 chord, which has this tritone. But it's also a D7 chord, which has the same tritone. I'm just playing them in root position so you get the gist. So again, same tritone, two different chords. So what I like to do is when seventh chords roll around, you can use diminished chords sparingly over two different seventh chords. So for example, an A flat 7 sharp 9 chord. Why is it an A flat 7 sharp 9? Because the root is here, the tritone of A flat is here, and this note is the sharp 9. Why am I putting that note in? Because it's chordal voicing. What is a chordal voicing? It's voicings built in fourths, where normally tertian harmony is like harmony is built in thirds. Chordal voicing is built in fourths. So why didn't we play this note instead, which is also a fourth, because it's the same tritone. So you want to put in the sharp 9 instead. So that's an A flat 7 sharp 9 chord. A D7 sharp 9 chord, which is the tritone substitution, is this chord, which also works for the A flat 7 chord because it's the 13th in the A flat chord. And the same goes for the other tritone that is in that chord, in the diminished scale. So you've got B7 sharp 9, and you've got F7 sharp 9. So if you play those chords like I've written them, they sound like this. Which sounds a lot cooler than this. Why? Because they're built in fourths, so there's more space between the notes, but it also uses different notes that are not in the scale, which is the sharp 9. And so if you play the diminished scale over top of that, it starts to sound a little bit better. So that's the whole concept. And so you have to think about each of those different chords in the context of using the diminished scale. So again, the same thing would go if you were doing the D flat diminished scale. You'd start on A7 sharp 9, go to C7 sharp 9, go to, actually that's the wrong chord I've written in there. So it should actually be A7 sharp 9, C7 sharp 9, then E flat 7 sharp 9, then B flat 7 sharp 9. I'll rewrite that and post it below, but I think you get the idea. So that one sounds more like this. So around it still goes. So again, you have to use these in moderation. And then what happens with the diminished scale is you start to figure out patterns. So let's go back to the C diminished scale and you get patterns that sound something like this. So you can work out all kinds of different patterns. I'm not going to go through all of them in this tutorial, but you can get pretty inventive with them. So see how it works out for you. I mean, again, as soon as you start playing patterns, it just starts to not sound like music anymore. So really you got to use them in moderation because a solo is not something like this. It's too bland, too uniform, too run-on sentencey, if you will. So that's my take on diminished scales. I hope you enjoyed that. In an actual context for me would be like in a 2-5-7 chord, so a 2-5-1 progression. So let's say we're doing 2 minor 7 flat 5 in C, so D minor 7 flat 5 to G7. That chord is where we would use the diminished scale. So a 2-5 might sound like this. So let's take more of that diminished scale out of there and see what we end up with. So it does have its usage. It is fairly simple to learn. I encourage you to download the PDF that I'm going to share the link with you below this video and give it a whirl. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. This is a new channel here on YouTube, so it'll really help the traction. And we're posting videos just like this one all the time, pretty much every day. So you can look forward to that. If you haven't yet been to jazzmental.com, go there and subscribe for notifications about upcoming masterclasses and courses. And what I want you to do now is get out there and improvise.